Hit the change room. We're about to level up.
Hello and welcome to The Change Room. Now here at Prolific Fitness, we are on a mission to help people achieve life-changing body transformations. That's who we are. That's what we're about. And so The Change Room is an extension of that. It's a new podcast. And I never thought I would be saying the word podcast. Threw up my mouth a little bit before as I said that. But I think in this case, we've created it as a way to help people get the information that they need, because so many people are so confused about this journey. And we don't want to gatekeep the information. You're confused by looking at different TikToks and Instagrams and your mate and your mate's mum, and they're all giving you different information about your weight and how to tackle it and how to do this journey properly. And we want to be able to shed some light on it because we see people change like their lives every week. And so we want to make sure that we can help get that information into the hands of people who need it. So today, we're kicking off with a topic that I absolutely love, and it's firstly, how do you tackle your weight loss journey? How do you actually structure this thing so it's actually effective and likely for you to achieve? But also, how do you do it without tackling your metabolism? Because we see it all the time that people jump into a weight loss thing and they drop 10 kilos in 4 weeks and whatnot. They lose energy, they lose muscle, they lose metabolism, and then they're left with a really weird position where they're lighter than they were. Their body doesn't look how they want it to look. Their metabolism's shot, and so essentially they put on weight super easy, and they're not strong, and the energy's not good, and we don't want you to get there. So we want to find a way for you to actually head in the right direction. Now, the first thing, why does people's metabolism drop as they lose weight? There's a few factors. The first one is just by the fact that the lighter you get, the more your energy requirements on a daily basis are going to drop. If there's less of you, there's less energy you need to eat to maintain yourself. But what I'm more talking about when people talk about metabolism drop, I mean more a long-term metabolism drop, mostly from losing muscle. Now, muscle has a lot of benefits, ton of benefits, you know. One of the biggest ones that people don't, aside from just looking good, one of the biggest things that people don't realize muscle actually does for you is it is the thing that supports your metabolism. If you have more muscle, you burn more calories doing nothing at rest. So obviously, this is why it's a weird thing and it's a bit of a mental trip to get your head around. But if you're trying to lose weight, one of the best things that you can focus on is how do we firstly build, and if we can't build, how do we just maintain as much muscle as we humanly possibly can while we lose weight? Because the big thing you don't want to do is go through a weight loss journey and it be a success and you lose all your muscle. Not only are you not going to be as strong, your blood sugar regulation is not going to be as effective, your energy is going to be a bit lower, but I think the biggest thing too, not only are you not going to look like you want, but you can't eat as flexibly and as generously as you would otherwise be able to if you did a more measured approach. So let's dive into it, okay? Firstly, we're going to talk about, in terms of the 5 levers, let's dive straight into it, that cause people to will not be able to get on top of this, and some of the issues people see. So first one is picking the wrong pace or not having a pace at all, okay? If you don't have a pace, you don't even know what you're heading to. I mean, so many people don't even have a desired pace of weight loss. So the idea is, how do you know if you're successful or not in your weight loss journey? How do you know? You know what I mean? Like, I think the issue is if you don't have anything, there's nothing to judge your progress based on. So the first thing I would say is we need to set a pace. Now, what is a good pace of weight loss? It varies person to person. It varies based on age and what you can manage and everything. But a good rule of thumb is about 0.5% of your body weight per week up to about 1% of your body weight per week, okay? Which means that if you are a 100 kilo person, we're looking at 500 grams to 1 kilo lost per week on average, okay? Now, in this case, when do you choose on the faster end? When do you choose on the slower end? When you have a lot of weight to lose, if we're talking about like over 30, 40 kilos, pick the faster end. Otherwise, you're going to be spending your life trying to get on top of this, and there's nothing wrong. We are trying to do a long lifestyle change, you know, in the future. But the other side of it is also you have to make it fast enough that it's going to motivate you. If you're picking on the very slow end, and you have to lose 40 kilos, it's going to not motivate you at all. So pick a weight that's a bit more pacey. Now, in this case, if you're already a bit leaner and there's not that much to lose, or for example, you're already like there's lots of stress in your life, so dropping a lot of calories is going to be really hard, or it's hard to juggle, hard to manage, do something a bit more moderate. You know what I mean? If it's something that you're like, I don't actually have to be on a rush, you will actually keep more muscle if you go slower. Here's a cool thing to remember, is that it's never going to be easier to build muscle than when you're gaining weight, right? Then it's a little bit harder to gain muscle when you're maintaining weight, but it can still be done if you stay the same weight. When you're in a slight deficit, slow deficit, it becomes, oh cool, it's a bit harder to maintain muscle, let's really work on it. And if you're in a very fast deficit, it's very hard to maintain muscle. So the faster in a deficit you are, the harder it is to maintain and build, and the more in a surplus you go, the easier it is to build. Now, I think the reason that that's really important is if you're trying to lose weight, we actually have to pick a weight that's not going to be too fast for you. If you need to lose 50 kilos, you'll be fine. I'm not too worried about that. If you want to lose 5 kilos, yeah, don't push it too fast, because it doesn't matter if you get there in 4 weeks but you lose a lot of muscle. Let's actually slow the pace down and make sure that you actually maintain a bunch of that muscle. That's the first thing. Secondly, part of that, in terms of the pace, is how do you track it? Because I know a lot of people will be tracking their weight once a week, once a fortnight. What's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with that is that your weight is going to fluctuate quite dramatically, right? I mean, depending on the weight of the person, your weight can fluctuate kilos per day. Now, if your weight's fluctuating kilos per day, let's use an example. I stand on a scale today, I weigh 80. I stand on a scale a week from now, I have a fluctuation up, I'm sitting at 82. It looks like I've gained weight. I freak out, I change my whole diet, and I could be perfectly sitting at maintenance, but I just don't know what's happening week to week. And that's the issue I see when you only track your weight once a week, once a fortnight, and you start making decisions based on that, is we just don't know if that's actually if you're actually accurate, if it's actually the weight that we are tracking. We don't know. So I think the first thing is I would actually much rather you look at a 7-day average. And the way we do a 7-day average, super easy. Jump on the scale more often. I'm talking about 3 to 7 times a week. Some people, 7 times a week is too intense for them, so pull it back a bit, but 3 to 7 times a week. I don't care about the fluctuations. It's going to jump based on stress, sleep, hydration, sodium intake, carb intake, a lot of factors. So I want you to ignore the daily measurements. What we look at is the weekly measurements. And if you are doing this right, you're going to set a good pace of weight loss. So say, for example, you set your pace of weight loss 1% body weight per week. You should be tracking 3 to 7 measurements per week. That will give you the weekly average. You look at the weekly average this week versus last week. Are we down at that pace? If yes, you don't change anything. That's good. If not, we then need to start adjusting. You can up the amount you're moving, you can pull back the amount you're eating, and we just have to find like that. But if you don't course correct or have a pace like that, you're essentially stabbing in the dark, and how do you know if you're making progress? You don't really. So I think the first thing is getting very clear on the pace, how to track it, and getting on top of that. If you have any more questions about that, flick us a message on our Instagram, at prolificfitness.co, and we can help you uncover what a good pace weight loss is for you and all of that, okay? Second one is strength training. This is a big one because yes, you can be dropping weight at the right pace, but unless we're strength training, you're not going to be maintaining that muscle. You absolutely are not going to. So it requires resistance. Now, what does that look like? Something that makes your muscles work. Now, I'm talking about not like, I love cardio, great for your heart, great for your lungs, great for a lot of the bodily systems, but I'm talking about strength training here. How can we push your muscles? Now, this is a thing, there's so many ways to do it. I mean, there are class options to do. You can do at-home workout. You can go, like behind us, we've got this nice gym setup. You can get into squat racks and barbells and dumbbells and lift some weight, but we need to be doing some strength training. Now, in terms of frequency, how frequent, sorry, my laptop's going off here, I'll silence it. In terms of frequency, how many times per week do we need to be training? Now, depending on the person, but I would say a good rule of thumb is starting at about 3 times per week. If you're doing 3 times per week, my recommendation is full body, because we want to be hitting those muscle groups multiple times per week individually. Look, you can absolutely maintain muscle perfectly at like 1 intense session per week of strength training. But if we're newer to this, or we're trying to maintain muscle while in a calorie deficit and losing weight, I would recommend we're doing a bit more frequent. I'd say 3 times a week at least. If you want to do 4 or 5, you can do it. And that's when you can get a bit more fancy with muscle group splits. But for now, let's not get fancy. Let's kind of stick to the basics and be strength training. Now, in terms of intensity, this is also the other thing. We need to be getting stronger or heavier or pushing a bit more over and over, slowly over time. And I think this is the big thing, is that a lot of people kind of hold themselves back. We need you to be pushing. So the intensity needs to be there. You need to be pushing within a couple of reps of failure. Now, when I say couple, when you're starting out, keep it a bit further from failure. 3, 4, 5 reps from failure. Now, I never want you pushing on a lot of movements. Some you can, light movements, and we might do an episode on this later, but when should you push a failure versus when not? But I don't think you should really, on the big, heavy compound movements, often go to failure at all. If you're doing a big squat or a deadlift, the risk to reward ratio it's not worth it. You know what I mean? So I think in this case, you don't have to push the failure on everything you do, but get within a couple reps from failure. Really push yourself. Start to make sure the form's good. Now, we have environments like this where the form we make sure is a priority, but in this case, like, you can be looking online for form videos. You can, send it to someone who's good at form. Record yourself, send it to them, ask them. I mean, there's so many ways to go about form coaching these days that I would recommend just get resourceful, find a way to do form coaching. Tell you what, I'm even happy to offer. Flick us a message on our Instagram with a video of you doing form, and we can have a quick review of it. I'm okay to do that. So make sure the form's good, make sure the intensity is there, make sure the frequency is there. In terms of protein, okay, this is another big one. Yes, we got to make sure that the pace is right and the kind of calories are right and everything to support the pace of weight loss we're trying to shoot. But one of the big ones is protein, okay? So say we've got the calories set right, and I actually haven't talked about that. We'll talk about it in a second. Protein. we've got to make sure protein's a big part of that, okay? Protein is going to be the thing that allows us to support our muscles regeneration. Without enough protein in our diet, we just can't replenish the muscle that we are working and breaking down, that muscle tissue. So in this case, it's really important. Now, how much do you actually need is a really kind of hotly debated topic, because the way that we do it very technically. Like, for example, if you're a little bit older, every decade older, you need a bit more protein, you know? We calculate based on lean body mass. So if you have a high fat mass, that's not really being calculated in the equation because we don't think it needs to be. As well as, for example, if you're in a calorie deficit, you should be having having more protein rather than if you were just maintaining or in a calorie surplus and gaining weight, right? But as a general rule of thumb, because that's confusing, if you'd like us to kind of go over that with you, again, message us, we can help you with that. But in this case, in terms of just a general rule of thumb, what you could be looking at, a very commonly touted one, is 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. So that works most of the time close enough. Like, for example, my weight, I'm 80 so kilos, up and down a bit, you know, but let's just say I'm roughly around there. That means my protein requirements are going to be about 160. Now, I actually shoot for 180 grams a day, but again, you can imagine if your goal is 180 and you're getting 160, that's much better than only getting 80 because you don't really know what you should be shooting for. So I'd use that as a general rule of thumb. If you want a more in-depth one, you can let us know. Protein requirements are a really important part there. The other part of the nutrition side of things is going to be the right calories. You're going to have to make sure the calories are correct. There's a lot of different ways. You could go online and look for total daily energy expenditure calculator. You can work out roughly what that is in terms of how much energy you're roughly expending on a daily basis. You have calorie calculators you can find online too that can help you figure this number out. It's just an estimate. So whatever that number spits out is literally it seems like you should be having roughly this calculation. But you can then calculate what the change needs to be based on the change in weight loss. So if your change in weight loss, say you're not losing weight fast enough, you can then actually just run that through a calculator, search it up online, calorie change calculator online. We can help you with that if you need as well. But the idea is, if your pace of weight loss isn't correct, you just need to change the amount of calories. Now, do you have to track calories? No, you don't. You can do portion approach. You can do meal suggestion ideas. You can just track protein. You can do flexible options. You can do so many things. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your nutrition approach is, calories are going in, calories are going out, and that calorie balance needs to be correct. If it's not going to help you on track. You can use fitness. You can use calorie trackers. There's a myriad of options, but this is just to point you in the right direction in this conversation, okay? So next one I'll say, this is one that is a big surprise to a lot of people who aren't in the gym space too often. If you're in the gym space, you would have heard this a lot. It's the supplement creatine. Now, this is something that a lot of people freak out when I start talking about supplements. I don't want to take supplements and this and that. Some people are in the other camp that they go, I'll take every supplement under the sun, which I also think is most of the time a waste of time. I'm not big on recommending supplements to everyone in every scenario. Okay, I think there's certain cases where supplements make a lot of sense. Now, I don't recommend really blanket recommendations for supplements across the board except for creatine. The reason being, it's one of the safest supplements that you can take. It's been researched for decades and decades, and it makes a significant difference in your ability to build muscle size and strength. Also, we found out in the last few years, and through studies that have come through, it actually helps with cognition. So gym bros have been taking it for decades to try get jacked, and it turns out it helps them get smarter too. So who would have known? But I think that what they've seen in studies is that it allows you to build muscle for an untrained individual who gets into training versus not taking it. You can build muscle about 20 to 30% faster than if you weren't taking it, which is significant enough that we should look at it as something to consider in this stack of things that we're trying to do to get on the right track. Because newsflash, if we're trying to lose weight, the chances are we're fighting against losing muscle. If we're dropping weight, the chances of losing muscle are really high. And so we're going to go, what can we stack our deck full of in terms of tools in that to make sure that we're not losing muscle, potentially even building muscle in the process. And this is one of those things where I just think there's very little negative benefit to something like this, where it's actually going to help you build muscle size and strength while we lose weight. Now, the only and consult your doctor, consult a pharmacist or a chemist or anything like that to help you make this decision, especially if you have medications or conditions. The one thing I will say is that I know that if you have kidney issues like chronic kidney disease or anything like that, as a function of any kind of metabolic waste that your muscle produces, so if you have lots of protein or you train really hard or have creatine, it's going to increase the metabolic waste, and that might be an issue for your kidneys. So again, if you have kidney issues, please be careful with this. if you're on medication that's significant or anything like that, check for contraindications. But this is one that I pretty much give as the only blanket recommendation across the board for something that could be looked into to help from a supplement point of view. Okay. Now, how much? Actually, firstly, where do you go to find it? First place I'd recommend. It's kind of all the same. It's different than protein powder. Protein powder, essentially, there's different textures, there's different flavors, there's different, all of that makes it a very different experience. Creatine monohydrate largely is just creatine monohydrate. It's a flavorless, colorless powder. So it's just kind of almost the same thing. Now, it needs to be from a reputable source. I recommend going to Chemist Warehouse and just picking the cheapest one on the shelf there, because it's reputable enough that you're not going to have any issues with that. You know what I mean? You could go to any like major supplement stores as well across the country, like the Chains or Sprintford or things like that, and buy off them. Just don't buy from like a weird, dodgy online site or whatever. Just go to a reputable place and get something basic, and you'll be fine, okay? Because it's pretty much the same thing across the board. Now, how much you should be having? Now, up to very recently, the kind of recommendation was 3 to 5 grams per day of creatine monohydrate. 5 if you're a larger person, in terms of like just a bit more weight to you. 3 if you're a smaller person. That recommendation has actually come out in the last year or two in terms of studies. That should actually be a little bit higher. Like we can get it specific again in terms of we got a guide, we've got a creatine guide. Again, we can send you, if you go to Instagram at prolificfitness.co, get hold of us, we can send you that creatine guide that gives you kind of dosage recommendations. But as a general rule of thumb, like super general, you could kind of pick it that every 10 kilos of weight is a gram of creatine you have per day. So for example, I'm an 80 kg guy, I'd have roughly 8 grams of creatine per day. That's actually dead on with where kind of I need to be having of creatine per day. Again, way more than the touted 3 to 5 that we used to go by in gym bro circles, you know. So in this case, it's something that I think across the board, doesn't matter if you're man, woman, older, younger, I would recommend this as something that's going to be an extra fuel to your fire to actually help you get these results, okay? Rest and recovery. This one is a massive one, and it is, everyone talks about rest, everyone talks about recovery, but no one talks about why it actually makes a difference. Why does it matter to rest and recover enough, you know? There's 2 things we're looking at here, stress and sleep. Now, we'll start with sleep. I mean, sleep is one of those obvious ones that everyone knows they should be sleeping more. Everyone knows this, you know? But in terms of how does it actually affect your ability to lose weight and retain muscle? Now, I think the cool thing is there was a 2010 study done on this one where they had groups in calorie deficits, same calorie deficit between the control group and the underslept group. The underslept group, they only let them sleep 5.5 hours per night, and they looked at the difference on their ability to lose weight. Newsflash, it didn't affect their ability to lose weight at all if they were underslept, which is really interesting. What it did is it affected their ability to retain muscle and lose fat dramatically. So over a 2-week period, they actually found that the group who were underslept lost 60% more muscle mass than the control group, and they lost 55% less in fat mass. So what that's telling us is if you're underslept on an ongoing, you know, if it's a one night, whatever, life happens, but if it's an ongoing basis, it means that you are losing significantly more muscle and retaining significantly less fat. So if you are chronically underslept, and you get to the end of a fitness journey, you absolutely can have done everything right, but just slept horrendously, and you can obviously and very easily find that you've actually not looking the way you want to look, and you've kept a lot of the fat, and you've lost a lot of the muscle, and your metabolism's lower, just purely based on that. So there are a couple of things we can look at here is why are you not sleeping enough if that is the case? Is it a schedule thing, or is it an inability to thing? Because those are treated very differently when we work with clients. If it's a schedule thing, then we got to look at, cool, what can we reprioritize? Can we put boundaries around things? Can we make more things more efficient? Can your nutrition be faster to make? Your dinners faster to prep? Can your workouts be shorter? Can you like restructure the way you're doing things in your schedule to make that happen? That's a really big part of it. If you're not able to sleep, then there's obviously like low-hanging fruit, like making, in terms of like being able to sleep well. That's, are we making sure that the light is low enough, that it's quiet enough, that you know, we're having a wind down routine, even non-stimulating activities an hour before bed. You can supplement with magnesium, tart cherry, 5-HTP, all these things. They can help. Now, in this case, if we are not sleep experts, so if there's more significant sleep help that you need, great. But we have actually a checklist. We've got these guides on everything. We've got a guide for sleep, and essentially, if there are the basics that we recommend being checked off. If they're not checked off, then obviously we go, well, it makes sense why you're not sleeping well, because we actually haven't structured sleep as a priority We would structure nutrition as a priority to make sure protein and creatine and calories are all right. We need to structure sleep, because sleep is as important as the nutrition or the training part of this piece. So don't neglect that as part of the equation, okay? The other side of it we'll talk about is stress. Stress affects every bodily system you have. Now, the big thing in this case is making sure that if you are overly stressed, again, there are ways your body is in fight or flight. It's in its sympathetic nervous system. It is not getting out of an adrenaline state. And that's an issue for decision making. It's an issue for your body's digestion. It's the ability for your body to allocate nutrients and resources and blood flow to the correct parts of your body that it needs to, because it's just in anxiety mode. So the big thing here is actually just making sure that we're able to find ways in your day all week that allow you to get out of this anxiety fight or flight mode. It's massive. It sounds woo-woo to people, but doing breathwork, going for a walk, doing saunas, doing workouts, calling a friend, listening to music really loud that you like, any of this stuff, if it helps you take your stress level down to baseline, do it. Do not let yourself sit at a chronically stressed level without paying attention to, I feel so stressed right now. My sympathetic nervous system is overdrive. My body's not digesting properly. I'm sweaty. My brain's not thinking properly because I'm physiologically feeling these bodily changes. Find a way to bring yourself to baseline multiple times a day. If you're chronically stressed, it will make a massive difference for decision making, your body's ability to operate and perform, recovery, everything. Also from recovery, make sure you're getting enough time off of the gym as well, taking deload weeks and making sure you have rest days as well, because again, if you're not recovering from workout to workout, it might be that you're pushing it too hard. If you're doing 7 intense full body sessions per week and not recovering, that might be something to look at as well, but that's much more rare in honesty, okay? Perfect. So I think in this case, look, in terms of this whole process, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to us, but it really comes down to these main things that we talked about. The first one, setting the correct pace and tracking it correctly, making sure you're doing strength training at least 3 times a week with good intensity, making sure the calories and the protein amount are set correctly and that we're able to find a way to hit those on a daily basis, making sure like something like creatine can provide a really great edge to you retaining muscle while you drop weight, and then obviously making sure that you're managing your stress and your sleep and your recovery and everything like that, because at the end of the day, this thing is, we see so many people make a big success of this, but even just one of these things being off can derail the whole thing. If you're doing everything perfectly but not sleeping properly, it can derail the whole thing. Everything perfect but protein's off, it's not going to work. Everything perfect but you're not training, and just literally you're doing everything but the training's not intense enough, and you cannot get the same results. And I think the biggest thing is we want to make sure anyone that's doing this gets to the end of their fitness journey or their body transformation journey, and they are as strong or stronger. Ideally, no, actually stronger. Screw that. Strength you can definitely build during a weight loss journey. The muscle is the one that's hard to retain. But if you can do these things correctly and really dial these in, you absolutely can build muscle and strength while in a fat loss journey at a good pace. That's the right, correct one for you. And I just wish you all the best on your journey. If you've got any questions, please reach out to us on Instagram. I'll plug it one more time, at prolificfitness.co, and flick us a DM. If you have questions about any of this or want any of the guides that I mentioned in this episode of this podcast, again, it freaks me out to say the word podcast. I hate it. But anyway, whatever. We're here now, so it's okay. But hey, look, again, we're on a mission to help people create life-changing body transformations. That's why we have created the Change Room. Hey, stoked to have you along for the whole episode. If you got here, you've got to the end. I appreciate you listening, appreciate your time, and I can't wait to see you soon. All the best.
Hit the change room. We're about to level up.